So let's do the AI part. This part's really cool. Don't worry if you can get the form down. It's just a regular form. You can get to it later. Also have the code on GitHub. Okay, AI stuff. This one's gonna take some explaining because it's way different than what we did here. Much different, but still pretty exciting. So I'm gonna make a new function in our AI file. I'm just gonna call it QA. It's async function. Okay, let's talk about this. In order to do what we're trying to do, I have to explain to you how the AI works. So in order for something like a LLM to be able to answer a question based off some information, which is what we want it to do, we want to give it. So like, think about how we did the sentiment analysis. We had to give it the entry, right? If we didn't give it the content of the entry, how would it have done the sentiment analysis? Okay, so if we want to have it answer a question across all of our entries, what do you think we need to do?
Do you have to patch it and feed it to OpenAI as well? Or is there a different LangChain module?
Feed what? To OpenAI?
Yeah,
all the entries?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you do. You want to feed all the entries. The only problem is there's one huge caveat, is that most LLMs have a context limit on how many tokens you can feed it. A token, you can think of a token on average as basically like 4 letters. Every 4 letters is a token. And most LLMs, or actually every LLM, has a token limit on how many tokens you can feed it. OpenAI, and it depends on what model. GPT-3, every new one that comes out has a bigger window. I think the biggest hosted big one right now is probably Anthropic. They just released one that has like over $100K token limit, which is massive. I forgot what GPT-3.5 Turbo is, but it's not big. And eventually you'll hit that limit. We might not hit it with our small data set, but you will hit it. I mean, you can go to ChatGPT right now, go copy a long blog post and paste it in GPT and ask it a question about it, and it'll throw an error. They're like, I can't, this is too much. You passed my context window. So we got to find a way to get around that. The best way to get around that is like, well, do you always need everything to answer this question? Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't need everything. That's one thing to think about. Maybe you only need a specific set of things. If I have a history book that's got 100,000 pages in it, and I'm asking a question about a specific date and time, do I need to tell GPT about this entire history book, or only the part that references this date and time? That's a solution. Another solution is to make multiple GPT calls, each call filling up the context window until it is aware of all of it. And then you kind of like summarize every single time. But basically, it's recursive. You would feed it some context, ask the question that you want, get that answer, feed it some more context, and be like, is this answer still valid based on this new context? And you'll keep doing that until you're done with all the data that you had, and then eventually you'll get the final answer. That works too. The other way, there's a lot of ways. We're going to do number one, the first way, where we're just like, maybe you don't need all this data. We're only going to send GPT the data that it needs to answer your question. But we're going to use AI to figure out what data that we need to answer the question. Actually, we're going to use something called a vector database. Anybody ever heard of that? Okay, let's talk about that for a second. So what is a vector? Vectors are just numbers, really. If you've ever done matrix math or anything like that, you can think of a vector as like, it's like an array of points, right? It's an array of numbers, a number between like 1 and 0. And it can have, many different numbers in that one vector. The amount of numbers in it is called like how many dimensions it is, right? So in the case of OpenAI's capabilities, you can have vectors that are over like 1,500 dimensions. Too many to plot in physical space, right? You can't plot 1,500 dimensions. Like we don't even know what 4D looks like, let alone 1,500. So why is that important? Well, basically what's going to happen is we're going to use AI to take the content, in this case our entries, the text of that, convert those into vectors or embeddings. An embedding is like a collection of vectors. And basically we're taking that string and turning it into a number that represents that string. It represents the meaning of it, the sentiment, everything about that string is being converted to a number. Okay. We're then going to store that number in a database, a special database called a vector database. And then when you ask a question, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take that question, we're going to convert that to a number. We're going to put that in the vector database as well. And now, forget about 1,500 dimensions. Just think about 2 dimensions. If I had 2-dimensional points plotted on a chart, okay, and they're just scattered all over the place, and then I get this other one that comes in and I plot it, I can do math to figure out which points are closer to this one, right? And I'm going to grab the ones that are closer, let's say the top 5, and I'm going to say, cool, these are the top 5 points closer to this point. That's basically what we're going to do. So we're going to turn your question into a vector, and then we're going to see what vectors are the closest to it in this space, which will be what entries are closest to this in meaning and reasoning and whatever algorithm the AI is choosing. And we're going to pull those out, and we're going to feed that as context to ChatGPT, just like we fed this single entry itself. That sounds like a lot of work and very hard. And there's companies literally that are raising billions of dollars to do just this. There's vector databases that are worth billions of dollars now that just came out 2 years ago. Pinecone is one of the biggest vector databases out there. It's amazing. We're just going to do one in memory. We're going to do an in-memory vector database. But a lot of databases are specialized for this. Some of them extend it. So you can do vector database in Postgres, Redis, Supabase. You can get a standalone vector database, ChromaDB, Pinecone, Milvus, Weaviate. There's so many of them. We're just going to do one in memory because we're just not going to do it. I've messed around with all of them. They're all just too much to set up and too annoying. So we'll just do one in memory. Okay, any questions on any of that? That was a lot. Actually, yeah.
Are these similar to a KNN algorithm?
KNN. I'm not familiar with a KNN algorithm, so I can't tell. I think they might be describing how the search on the algorithm or the search on the vector database is, and there's different algorithms for that. One is like cosine similarity, which is what we're going to do. I think KNN might be one of those algorithms in which you can search vectors on, but I'm not a machine learning expert or mathematician, so I don't really know, but could be. But yeah, if you go to OpenAI's website, if you go to their blog, they actually have a really good illustration of vectors. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's on like this other one where they talked about embeddings.
Nearest neighbor algorithm is what they were referring to.
Oh, nearest neighbor. Oh, I think you could use the nearest neighbor for that. I think the nearest neighbor gets more complicated the more dimensions you have though. So I don't know. It's actually not that complicated once you look at it. Okay, so here's like a 2D example of it, right? So like let's say here, like imagine all of these are our entries, our journal entries, right? And they're plotted based off meaning. The closer they are, the more they relate in meaning and reasoning, right? So like canine companion say, that's very related to wolf, right? Feline friends say, meow. Those two are very related. And these are animals, so they're kind of grouped together, right? So everything's kind of grouped together and by their meaning and relations. And then basically the question that you ask gets turned into one of these two, and it too gets stuck on this graph. And then from there, we're just going to pick the ones that are closest to it, take those out, feed it to GPT, and keep it underneath the context window. And then we just ignore everything else because like you didn't need all of that to answer this question. Does that make sense? Okay. They have like a 3D one too. Oh, here's what I wanted to show. Yeah, this one. So you can kind of see like how these things are plotted, right? This is just a 3D representation. There's only 3 dimensions, but it goes higher than that. So you can see these things are grouped together. Here's the text for them and why they are grouped together. So these are like all animal stuff, athletes, some film stuff, something about a village, and transportation. And they're all grouped in that way. So when you ask a question, we're just going to throw yours in here too. Let's say that one's going to be a yellow dot. Which one of these dots are closer to the yellow dot? Take those. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yes.
How deep have you gotten into vectors and matrices? Like, is a fairly superficial understanding acceptable, or are you like, no, keep learning what you can?
Yeah, so to be able to do what we're doing now, what I just told you is all you need to know. You don't need to know any of this stuff in order to be able to build applications with this stuff.
But you're done, like, so as a boot camp developer, like,
no.
Don't worry about it.
No, you do not need to worry about any of this stuff. The only reason I went deep on this is two. One, part of my job is taking a lot of these technical pitches. I'm usually talking to like PhD scientists from MIT who's like pitching me a company, and they talk very deeply about this stuff. So I'm like, okay, I need to go understand this. So that's one. And then two, I've always just been interested in math and stuff like that. I'm not a mathematician. If you know me, you know I'm terrible at math, but it was always something I was interested in. So I just never was excited about it. This actually got me excited to go learn. So I actually asked ChatGPT to build me a math curriculum to teach me more about AI and machine learning. So then I just went and followed that curriculum. And
so cool.
That's how I know a lot of stuff. But I would even say I'm not good at it. I don't understand it as well as the people who created it. I can have a conversation about it, but don't ask me to like write an equation about this stuff because I don't know. I really don't know.